I'm not a quitter, I don't quit. I'll stay on and finish it. I'm not a quitter, I don't quit. I'll stay on and finish it. I'll stay in a job I hate. Every day I get home late, undervalued, overstretched. But I'll just keep doing my best, cause I'm not a quitter, I don't quit. I'll stay on and finish it. I'm not a quitter, I don't quit. I'll stay on and finish it. My boss is completely mad, and the pay is pretty bad, and it's making me quite stressed. But I'm not like all the rest, cause I'm not a quitter, I don't quit. I'll stay on and finish it. I'm not a quitter, I don't quit. I'll stay on and finish it. My confidence is plummeting. I'm not sleeping, got quite thin. Voice is breaking, feel depressed. But I'm not gonna take a rest, cause I'm not a quitter, I don't quit. I'll stay on and finish it. I'm not a quitter, I don't quit. I'll stay on and finish it. I'm not a quitter, I don't quit. I'll stay on and finish it. I'm not a quitter, I don't quit. I'll stay on and finish it. Got to work, they sent me home. I've just been drinking here alone. Marriage broken, I'm a mess. Can't do anything but rest. But I'm not a quitter. The hardest part of any challenge, I think it's that moment you realize you just don't want to do it anymore. That sinking feeling that something you once loved just isn't working. But you're wondering, am I miserable enough to go through the process of quitting? I know that agonizing indecision of quitting so well. I left a career in teaching, made the difficult decision to fold 2 startups that were very close to my heart, decided not to run a marathon I accidentally signed up for. And don't get me started on dry January, 12 days this year. But in each of these situations, even though I knew it was the right decision, even though after the initial uncertainty there was this space for new and great adventures, even though every time I quit I learned more about how I wanted to live my life, nevertheless, I felt so much shame and guilt for quitting. Was I just being a coward? Maybe someone else would have been able to cope better in the situation. Maybe I just hadn't worked hard enough. In the past few years, we have been force-fed buzzwords of resilience and grit. We've been told the strongest people are those who never give up. But I've seen one too many friends and myself push themselves to breaking point in the name of stoic resilience. Not quitting, even though you're unhappy, is like buying a pack of cigarettes, smoking 2, and being like, ugh, I feel sick, but I better finish the pack anyway, because that's what everyone's expecting. And I might like it if I keep smoking. So last year, I put on Facebook my proposition that our societal aversion to quitting was keeping many of us in really unhappy and unhealthy situations for much longer than necessary. In the next 48 hours, I was inundated with responses. Everyone had a story about quitting. Commuting 3 hours a day there and back to be bullied by my boss. Giving up a dream career as a professional musician because I was miserable. Being in an unhappy relationship, but not wanting to have that conversation. Getting 2 weeks into a 2-year job abroad and knowing I'd made the wrong decision. And I had so many more. So I sent out a survey. 84% of people said they would not want to be called a quitter. 1 in 10 said they had been unhappy in these situations for over 4 years of their life. And the impact? Mental health problems, loss of confidence, depression, alcoholism, giving up on creative dreams, wasting years of my life. And why didn't people quit? Even though 90% of people said once they did quit, it improved their overall well-being and happiness. As one person put it, I felt there would be a black mark forever if I quit. At what point did we put not being a quitter on a pedestal above our own happiness? Nature quits all the time. Leaves don't hang on the trees worrying what their boss, the oak tree, is going to think of them. They don't deliberate hanging on for one more winter, hoping it gets better in the spring. No. Once they've given their nutrients to the tree and it no longer serves them to be there, they fall down. But the leaves that fall are still useful because they decompose and the nutrients go back into the soil. Do you know what happens to the leaves that stay on the tree? They freeze to death. Remember this. It may feel selfish to be leaving a situation, like you're abandoning ship, like you're only thinking of your own needs. But if you leave at that moment, you still have energy to put into other projects, other relationships, to your next steps. If you stay, you're basically as useful as a frozen leaf. And I want to be clear, this isn't about quitting being better than staying. It's about asking a different question altogether. Imagine if you're in a difficult situation at work and it's getting you down. If you ask, should I quit? It immediately brings in connotations of not coping, of giving up. What if we were like the leaves on the tree and simply asked, does it still serve me to be here? Suddenly there's a shift from one of abandoning, failing, and not coping to empowerment, choice, responsibility. This puts you in the driving seat and you can make an informed decision. When you're hungry, you eat. When you're tired, you sleep. When something no longer serves you, you quit. How do you know if something no longer serves you? Because quite frankly, so often, the stress that has been normalized in our society is insane. And I know that when I was teaching, I found it hard, but I hadn't realized how burnt out I was. I woke up every morning in my final year of teaching, dreading going to work. I was often so late, I was on the bus with my students going to school. And I actually ended up in hospital because I was so dehydrated from my back-to-back coffees and not drinking enough water. And I lay in the hospital bed and I begged the doctor to let me leave because I had to take my students on a school trip. And she was like, no, you need to stay in bed. And when I finally left, I remember the summer putting on music and dancing in my kitchen and having this realization that I hadn't had that much energy for years. And I actually started crying because I was like, how could I have been this out of touch with myself? Like I was re-meeting the me before I started that job. And that really scared me because I knew I'd been tired, but I hadn't realized how bad it had been. So when you're in the thick of it, how can you tell? Well, what if we did something we very rarely do anymore? What if we could take a moment, sit in silence, and ask our bodies? Ask our bodies. This is something I didn't do at all when I was teaching. But this summer I had a different experience. I spent 5 weeks walking across northern Spain doing the Camino. I don't know if anyone here's done it. And every day, for 35 days, I had to ask myself how far I wanted to walk. And some days I drove myself mad trying to logically work out what the right thing to do was. Like, had I walked far enough? Had I pushed myself enough? What would it mean if I gave up after 6 kilometers? After a while, I started to ask my feet. I was wearing different shoes to these. Ask my feet what they wanted to do. And at first, it seemed really weird, but I always got a response. Sometimes they'd be like, yes, let's walk another 10K. And some days they would go, we are stopping at the next town, and we're getting a beer. And it was always the right thing. The other question I asked my feet was, what option feels like a relief? And again, it was the right thing. Like, you may feel the relief is going to be the easy option or the one that takes less effort, but sometimes it's a relief to continue, and we just need that reassurance. And in those moments, we need to draw on our grit and resilience. But to stop, we need to draw on honesty and courage. And it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. Yes, other people may be able to walk further, work harder, love longer, but your body always intuitively knows what's best for you. So many of us are putting our lives on hold with this quitting paralysis. But what I find fascinating is that in the startup world, failing fast and changing direction is essential for the evolution of any idea. Steve Jobs famously looked in the mirror every day and asked, am I still happy with the way I'm living my life? And his company did all right, didn't it? What if we saw ourselves as the entrepreneurs of our lives? Instead of quitting, we'd be innovating, updating, adapting, and pivoting so that we could function at our best and bring real value to the world. What if when people said they wanted to quit, instead of judging them, we championed them on their great life innovation, their acute awareness of what they needed at that stage in their life? How would that change the amount of people signing off work with burnout, unhappy marriages continuing, people feeling totally lost? We all have the power to shift this stigma around quitting. I want in future generations people to be saying, apparently in the olden days, you weren't allowed to quit, and it was really shameful. We can do that. But it takes every single one of us, and it takes that question, and getting really honest. Does this still serve me? The leaves don't deliberate on when to leave the tree. They just fall off when they're ready. They'd freeze to death if they stuck around, but instead they decompose and give their nutrients to the ground. Dum, dum, dum. How many changes does it take a light bulb? What if our lives were just the same? Twisting and turning, adjusting and learning, innovating every day. So you've got to ask, does this still serve me? I know the answer's right for you. Take a moment of quiet. Does this still serve me? You know what you've got to do. Steve Jobs looked into the mirror every day and asked if he still liked what he was doing. If the answer was yes, he'd carry on. And that's why every one of us carries an iPhone. Remember that life is a constant innovation. Today is just one prototype. It's not about who's holding on longest. It's a question for you, what's right? So ask yourself, does this still serve me? And know the answer's right for you. Take a moment of quiet. Does this still serve me? Create space for something new. Remember the trees, freezing to death on the trees. Remember the leaves, freezing to death on the trees. Remember, 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 remember the leaves. Everybody sing it with me. So I've got to ask, does this still serve me? I know the answer's right for me. Take a moment of quiet. Does this still serve me? I know what I've got. Key change. I've got to ask, does this still serve me? I know the answer's right for me. Take a moment of quiet. Does this still serve me? I know what I've got to do. The leaves don't ask permission to fall down. Thanks very much.